Okay, hello and welcome to this chapter of the video. So what we're doing now is going deep into the content of part 5 and the first chapter here is chapter 24, which talks about meetings. So I noticed that in the previous videos that roughly half of the screen was where you had the content, and so I think that has made it difficult for those of you who've been following the series up till now. Um, so what I've decided to do is to change the appearance of the document. So now I have it in landscape mode, and in landscape mode, I've also changed the background of the entire document. So don't be surprised if you come back to this document and you see it's in black background. So how did I do that? I came here and I changed the page setup. So to landscape mode, and then I changed the page color to black. What that did was turn everything into black because the text was already in black. So in doing that, I had to change the color of the text also to white. And so I'm going to be using a lot of these red like, green like, or yellow like. I think I'll try green, but I tried green here for ACT, that's ACT, and it doesn't seem to have a, a an intuitive look, especially for your eyes if you're now watching. But generally, what I wanted to achieve was to make the content look better for you, and I hope this works. But it's one of those things I wish I had discovered from the start. But if I had waited till I discovered everything, I maybe would not have started, because I think that's one of the challenges I've had previously starting out on YouTube. I started out about 2 years ago, and then I stopped. And now, in trying to be consistent, one of the things I'm forcing myself to do is to just get up and get it done. And hopefully, along the way, by God's grace, we'll just make things better. So, chapter 24 talks about meetings. And it says, for an organization to work well, three things must occur at every level of the organization. These three things, that's accountability, coaching, and transparency. So the rest of this chapter is going to focus on these three things. That's accountability, coaching, and transparency. And then it gives a very good acronym for it. I think the acronym is fitting. It's called ACT, that is ACT. Okay. So it says, I use these particular word only because they form an easy to remember acronym. That's ACT. Yeah. So if you hear me say ACT or ACT, then it's referring to these three things, these three ideas: accountability, coaching, and transparency. Now, that's different from the ACT or ACT exam for young secondary school candidates who are going on to university, I think. So this is the context of ACT or ACT for this video. Accountability is declaring. Now I'm going to underline declaring here, or let me just highlight declaring, because you it says for three things. You're declaring one, your destination, and that is your vision, your mission, your OKRs, your KPIs, everything that says this is where we're going and this is where we look like. Now, that is the point of declaration. But I think that the other thing, and he's going to talk beyond just declaration here. So we underline destination. It says the action. So it's one, you're declaring your destination, you're declaring your action, and you are declaring whether or not those action steps were taken. So that's accountability. Accountability is declaring your destination, your action, and whether or not those action steps were taken. I think this is closely associated with other positive characteristics that we that you might be familiar with. Positive characteristics like integrity, honesty, because at the end of the day, for the business, you want to say this is what we do and then follow through with exactly what you say you do or you promise your customers that you do. Okay. So coaching is declaring. Now, let us also notice that accountability, one, is declaring the action steps, and then whether or not you keep to your you declaring your destination, and whether or not you keep to the action steps required of the destination that you're headed. And then coaching is also declaring. So think here, some is driving towards something, and we're going to follow through to see exactly what that is. It says coaching is declaring the current health of the entity, individual, team, department, company, both the good and the not good. With the not good describing in detail what the issue is and declaring a proposed solution. This is where reports can make requests for help from their managers. So it says in declaring what is not good, you're providing detail about the issue so that you can get support from managers up the chain. So, current health of the entity, declaring two things is coaching: current health of the entity and the not good. The current health of the entity means what is good, and two, what isn't good. So, that is what current health means in this context. So I think using too many colors might not be good, but let's just try this and see where we're headed. So then number three is transparency, declaring one feedback. So the first thing that's important in transparency is feedback. You're declaring feedback to people based on what they are doing, is declaring feedback to people based on what they are doing. I think that this context is very important, um, because if someone hasn't done something, and I think that point should also be in the text. If someone hasn't done something about it, I think we're getting to that point. But it says feedback. You're declaring what? Feedback to people on what they are doing. This should be to a person's manager, to peers, and to reports. That's feedback. You're declaring feedback to a person, to people on what they are doing. So the feedback is to the manager that is up the chain. The feedback um is also vertical. Yeah. Let's look at that word again. I hope this is the last time I'll have to check it. It wasn't so confusing some recently, but I think I've fallen into the part where it has become confusing again. Horizontal aligns parallel. Okay, good. So horizontal is parallel, and then vertical. So number one, you're declaring feedback to the manager, that is vertical, and then you're declaring feedback to peers, that is horizontal relationships, and then you're declaring vertical you're declaring feedback again vertically, but then to the lower rung of the chain of the structure of the organization. So the second thing is, you said the first thing we're declaring is feedback, and then the second thing is framework. Using this framework, this is what I like, this is what I wish that you could do. So in the following framework, it says like, these are the specific actions that I like that you're doing, and these are the things that I wish that. So it says, for example, these are the specific actions that I wish you would do differently. This accountability, coaching, and transparency needs to happen in both directions. It says here, it needs to happen in both directions. Let's use the highlight feature for this and hope hopefully it would give us the background. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it looks rather too bright, but let's give it something closer to where we want it to be. Okay, not so bright, but it's properly highlighted now. This is best achieved. So this accountability, coaching, and transparency, okay, is best achieved through a regular series of meetings. Now, the purpose of meetings is not just to meet those three conditions. Meetings are things that we also do as part of operations in any organization. But then it says that to best achieve those three things, you're going to have a regular series of meetings. And then it goes on to list 6 types of meetings: one on one, team, company wide, that is all hands. That's what most companies, most startups call them. Office hours, company wide social event, and quarterly planning offsite events. Each manager should plan to devote a full day each week to internal meetings. The weekly team meeting will be the longest. The weekly team meeting will be the longest, up to 3 hours in the beginning, until teams learn the habit of writing down all inputs prior to the meeting. Then it can get down to 30 minutes. This is important because, in my experience, I've noticed that many organizations meet a lot. I work on contracts for a university, and while on the project as a contract staff, we're designing courses, and you have to reach out to the managing team on the inside to know, to clarify something. And then one of the challenges is they're constantly in meetings, like every day they have meetings. In some organizations they have too little meetings, but in an organization like that, they have like too many meetings, so they're always meeting every day. And because they're meeting every day, it sort of like gives lesser time for people to do the actual work. So what this point alludes to is it is important for you to maybe have so many meetings in the beginning, but along the way, people want to start writing down things as inputs prior to the meeting so that you can have fewer minutes, or lesser hours to talking. So it says the weekly one on one meetings and office hours will consume the remainder of the day. This timing determines how many team members a single manager can effectively oversee. If one of your managers can't fit all the necessary meetings into a single day, she's got too many people reporting directly to her, and you need to reorganize, or she needs to run more efficient meetings. So the calculus here is a manager should have one day for meetings the entire week, just one full day addressed to meetings. If she cannot have all of our meetings in that full day, that is internal meetings, all of the issues, whatever they are, that require attention, if she or he cannot have everything fixed into that single day, then this person has too many people reporting to her, or she doesn't know, or he doesn't know how to manage the meeting time well. So if you fit everything into one single day, then it's a lot more effective for you to say, this is how many, it's easy to calculate, really, to say this is how many hours, because one full day dedicated to meetings is roughly 8 hours of your time. That is total. So you might have like 6 hours, I mean 6 to 7 hours net of that 8 hours actual meetings, because you're going to have breaks in between them. So if you have 6 hours multiplied by 22, uh, well, not 6 hours multiplied by 22, but 6 hours a week multiplied by 4, that gives you 24 hours. And then 24 hours in a month, you multiply that by 12 months, and you can then see how many number of hours you spend meeting. But I think the point may have been alluded to in the past, but if we haven't talked about it here, one of the things that we've learned, I think we've addressed this with levels and some caucus, but you we have to factor in two the meetings, the culture of meetings, asynchronous meetings or asynchronous events. So if someone types in an issue to the manager and says, this is the issue I'm facing, so if you have like too many reports in that day and you can't meet with everybody, one thing that you can easily do is to look at the sheet of all the issues that your reports have sent to you for that week that they need urgent attention to. And if it can be done asynchronously, you just go to something like Loom and you record the explanation, or maybe even show your screen to explain some of the tactical things or strategic things that you want people to see and that you're talking about in that video. The point of the matter is, if you have so many hours into meetings, you have lesser amount of hours to do things. And if you do not have meetings often, especially very important one-on-one meetings, then there might be issues left unattended to. So you can use asynchronous meeting features or tools like Loom to record your feedback. Okay, so the overhead, 20% of the standard work week, can feel tremendous to a startup CEO who is accustomed to the organic information flow of a small group working together in the same room. But without this 1 day per week investment, a larger team will never fully know what to do, nor will the CEO get the needed feedback on a performance or the company's performance. Calendar cadence. Calendar cadence is very important for us, especially if you're watching this as an operations assistant or executive assistant. So, what is calendar cadence all about? It says Paul Graham of Y Combinator famously points out that makers rather, engineers need long stretches of uninterrupted time to be productive, long stretches, whereas managers are most effective when meeting rather. So a manager has to know what's going on, the flow of work in the organization, the flow vertically and the flow horizontally. And the operator, that is the engineer, for example, just needs to get job done. So we have to balance between the person who needs to understand things, to see things happening, and the person who just needs to make sure things are happening, like just do the work, the actual work that is required for that organization to deliver the promise, whether it's a service or a program or a product. So it goes further to explain that the compromise is to schedule days when no meetings are allowed. Now, he's going to also talk about how controversial this simple idea is on that calendar cadence. And um, let's use another color. Okay. So we now have this structure presented to us. 1 day of internal meetings, 1 day of external meetings, and 3 days of no meetings. What is this going to look like for an organization? But I think somewhere along the line, he also clarifies why this is challenging to some people for some people to accept. It isn't critical when these days are. So it can be staggered or made flexible. So you can have first day of the week, which is Monday, could be a work day. Tuesday could be a day of meetings, whether internal or external. So it doesn't have to be like Monday internal, Tuesday external, and then the remaining Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday will be no meetings. It can be made flexible, but the idea is that you want to have 1 day for internal meetings, 1 day for external meetings, and 3 days of uninterrupted commitment to the actual work. So if you I think this is also effective. It will now depend on the executive that you're working with. If the executive doesn't like this idea and they want to have meetings every day, but for say morning or afternoon, then that's fine. But managers need to be open to the idea of structuring their calendar this way. Have a day for internal meetings, a day for external meetings, and 3 days of uninterrupted work. So the above schedule even comes under fire, often comes under fire from recruiters who worry that it will be difficult to conduct all on-site interviews on a single day because many qualified candidates won't be able to make it in on the appointed day. So he explains why this may not necessarily be the case. He says for first, higher first your higher and close rate for candidates should be very high, approximately 75%. Otherwise, you're losing incredible amounts of time by doing all day in-person interviews with many candidates that you don't want to hire or that you don't want to work for you. Therefore, unless you're already hitting the 75% metric, you should start screening candidates more effectively, that is brutally, in your phone interviews and lower the number of in-person interviews. I was recently part of a recruitment effort, and we did scrutinize the CV a lot. We got roughly 50 applications in that window. And at the end of the day, we selected about 6 people to interview because we paid particular attention to the details in their CVs before we had a short list. And the those were the 6 that we roughly scheduled for an interview. And it's roughly the same thing in high performance recruitment efforts. You have a longer list of applications to review, but then you have a very tiny amount of people that you're actually going to interview. If you have to interview or speak with all like so many people, then there must be something wrong about the recruitment exercise or the recruitment policy, because that's time that you're spending talking to people who you're not even going to hire eventually. So we want to cut back on spending so much time in that way. And then it says, second, it is true that some candidates can only come in on specific days or times. However, the benefits of having meetings on only one set day, as, as measured by increased productivity of the company, far outweigh the cost of losing out on a few candidates. If you have 10 great candidates and you only have one position, at the end of the day, you only have one position and you're only going to hire one person unless you change your mind and you decide you're going to hire two. So is it good to talk to all 10 candidates? Yes. But at the end of the day, you're hiring one person. So you don't want to spend so much time talking to the other people that you're not going to hire, unless you're doing that as a way to encourage people and just keep people going and wishing them the best. But you have to look at the cost in terms of hours for the organization. So if you're going to hire one great person out of 10 great candidates, then we should be honest with ourselves and and sort of cut back on the number of hours. Like just fix everything into one day. It's that's the point he's making here. Additionally, if the candidates cannot find the time to make it on the set day within 2 or 3 weeks, it is quite likely that they won't take the job anyway. I think this is very practical. One of the things that I like about his way of writing is the no BS approach. That is very honest about it, and he states it. If it's not this, then it's this, and if it's still not this, then maybe you shouldn't have that issue or exercise in the first place. And so this bit is very instrumental. If you've scheduled this person to meet with you in an interview on a Monday for 2 to 3 straight weeks and the person doesn't come, then maybe the person just really doesn't want the job. And it's not like the interviews with a particular person will take the entire day. It might take an hour or two. I've sat in an interview that took roughly longer than an hour, but many of the interviews that I sit in now are roughly 1 hour interviews with international clients, and they're really good because you get to discuss things, you clarify things, and that's truly how you know whether it's not going to be a good fit. But I've been in interviews where this this I think I remember one where a recruiter reached out to me and said they wanted to interview me, and they were in that interview about less than 15 minutes, and I didn't take the job anyway. But the point of that is 15 minutes to talk about an interview where you're going to hire somebody. I don't think that is ever effective. So when we want to do things, we should just commit ourselves to doing them well. And sometimes when it means committing to doing something well, it also means committing energy and time and resources. That's eventually how you know what you put in and whether you deserve to get quality something back out of it because you've invested quality input into it. But if you haven't invested quality input into it, then you shouldn't be surprised if you don't get quality output. There are many other high level candidates out there. You can find another one, but there are only a finite number of productive work hours within the company. Once lost, there is no way to recapture them. Okay, so let's proceed. There are two exceptions to the advice above. In the very early days of the company, when a department has just one person, at that stage, the department lead can set a recruiting schedule that works for her as she builds a team. Departments that are, second factor is that departments that are entirely non-technical and don't require focused work time. So if you're non-technical and you don't require focused work time, then the rule that you should have 1 day for internal meetings, 1 day for external meetings, and then 3 days of uninterrupted work doesn't necessarily apply to you. But if you are technical, then you need to have 3 days worth of non-interrupted, that is focused time committed to your work. Because that's how you get work done. That's what you're paid for getting things done. So spend time doing things. The guidelines above are for when there is already a team in place, which requires uninterrupted days for its work. This is particularly important for the engineering team. Uh, this is important for the engineering team. He keeps referring to engineering teams, partly because I think he's worked with tech companies, but this might not be an engineering team in your own case. This might just be a team that does content creation, and you're always creating editing videos, and editing videos takes quality amount of work. Like you've got to be focused. So in that case, if this also applies to you, so not just only engineering teams. Then the second thing that we're looking at is meeting order. We've looked at meeting cadence. Now we're looking at meeting order. When creating the schedule for the day of internal meetings, I recommend the following order: one-on-one meetings, then you have leadership team meeting, then all hands meeting, then CEO open office hour, then company-wide social event. The one-on-one meetings are a time to ensure that each report is fully prepared for the team meeting. Okay. That each report is fully prepared for the team meeting. As reports begin to prepare fully for their one-on-one meeting in advance, then their accountability and coaching can be pushed into the team meeting, allowing more time for transparency during the one-on-one call. At the leadership team meeting, all issues are surfaced and either resolved or moved to a rapid decision making process. Remember, we've talked about the rapid decision making process, and we spent quite a substantial amount of time in that video because it was a very structured approach, and so we needed to look at in detail, step by step. So there's the rapid process, and if you haven't watched that video, you can go back to watch that video. So all the decisions from the leadership team meeting can then be shared at the Hollands meeting. The CEO open office hour, which I highly recommend, can be scheduled anytime in the day. And finally, if you have a regular company social event, which I also recommend. Remember, we talked about social event previously, like having a campfire spirit within the team, that is gathering to eat and just having spending time together. I'm also learning how to do product management, and one of the things that I've learned so far in product management is that you need to have a strong bond, not personal bond, but strong, like symphony harmony between the product manager and the product design team and the product engineering or product development team. So the same thing applies here. Social events are important in a company. Some companies do not have an affection for social events, like they do not think social events are important, but it's saying here that social events are important. So, and finally, if you have a regular company social event, which I also recommend, the internal meeting day is a logical day to have it. Internal meeting day is a logical day to have it, as this is the day when the majority of your team will be in the office. For remote teams or for hybrid teams, some people wouldn't be in the office on other days. So, best to have your social event on the day you have internal meetings. So the day of internal meetings can then be a day like Friday, so that the environment is a little more relaxed. But Monday, because of the culture in Western companies, Mondays are like a strong getting work done day, sort of. As the company grows, department meetings, both one-on-ones and team, will likely have to happen on a different day. Just as the one-on-ones are prep for the team meeting, the department meetings are prep for the leadership meetings. I therefore recommend scheduling department meetings the day prior to the leadership meetings. The day prior to the leadership meetings. I therefore recommend scheduling department meetings the day prior to the leadership meetings. So if it's now the day prior to the leadership meetings, that means that these, because both of them are now internal meetings, that means that the internal meetings are not occurring, all the internal meetings are not occurring on the same day. But remember, not just a few minutes ago, we're talking about how all the internal meetings should happen in the same day. But I think this is a flexible statement to say it may not necessarily be the case. Leadership meeting might then be a day after the department meetings. But if and I understand why this is a little bit more practical, because if you have the department meetings this hour and then the next hour is leadership meeting, then people, especially department heads, haven't integrated the discussion and taking time to think about things before they present updates in the leadership meetings. So I think staggering it that way is also helpful. So you may now have certain parts of your internal meetings in 2 days. So if you have internal meetings on mornings, Monday and Tuesday, and then you have external meetings or in the afternoons of Monday and Tuesday. That also works. So meeting leads. It is important that each meeting have a designated meeting lead who is sometimes, but not necessarily, the group's manager. This person is responsible for making the meeting run well, which also means ensuring that all meeting participants submit their updates and issues in writing in advance and show up on time. The meeting lead must be ruthless about sticking to the timeline, and whenever something off topic comes up, they should note it, but schedule the discussion rather for another time. Without an effective meeting lead, meetings quickly become inefficient and people come to resent them. So that's quite self-explanatory. One-on-one meetings. To understand the basis of these meetings, I recommend that all team members read the same book to get on the same page about the purpose and structure of these meetings. If you manage managers, then that book should be the best one. Then that book should be the best one. This book should be the best one, which is Andy Grove's High Output Management. Remember, he's recommended this book in a previous chapter, High Output Management. This book is the gold standard for how to effectively manage a team, but it is not short. I like the practical approach it takes to writing. It says it's a very important book and everybody should read it, but then it's not short. So it's time that you're going to invest, that the team is going to invest into reading the book together, or reading the book and then sharing their thoughts, but it's also going to be time spent wisely because it's going to pay off eventually. If you manage individual contributors who are unlikely to read a long book like High Output Management, then instead ask the team to read The 1 Minute Manager by Kenneth Blanchard and Spencer Johnson. Okay, this is another book is recommended. So let us highlight this. It's a very short read, 30 minutes, and it contains simple, effective advice. Assigning it uniformly will make sure your whole team has a common basis for proceeding. So let us copy this and see if we can search for this book and just see what, at least if we enter it into search here, we're going to see the the cover. So this is the cover. Let's take a look at it in, oh, there's a publicly available copy on the Internet Archive. So this could be an interesting book for me to read in the channel. Okay, the internet speed is slower than usual in this moment. Okay, the 1 Minute Manager, and that's it. So this is it by two PhD holders. More than 7 million copies sold worldwide. That's a pretty forceful, compelling reputation. Okay, next paragraph. The one-on-one meeting should occur soon after the onboarding process is complete. Have both the manager and the team member come to the meeting with written, measurable OKRs for the next team member. When the manager and team member reach a consensus on a set of OKRs, ideally three or fewer, merge these into one list. So you have several people submitting ideally three or fewer OKRs, and then you have like a master or a published OKR for that department. I think this is important. I've been in a team where we wanted to list OKRs, and then we had like each person had OKRs that were more than five, and so that might be a sign that we are not investing into identifying the best OKRs for the team's investment. So the lesson there, it says that you want to have three or fewer OKRs submitted by each person. Then it says run subsequent meetings according to the following template. So team member, accountability, goals and actions. Last week, for each of your stated actions from last week, did you get them done? Yes or no? If not, what blocked you? What habits can you adopt so that you don't encounter that obstacle again? I think one of the very first few experiences that I've had working in an organization and seeing how meetings were done is for the Holland's meeting, we just had a template. It was a table and you had rows and columns for certain things. There was a challenge, there was updates, there was next action item. And then it was really clear because when we were having the team discussion, each person could see the flow of each person's presentation, and then you could easily report the discussion or understand what was being talked about if you came into the meeting at any point in the meeting, because there was a template and there was a structure that we followed. So You have the accountability part, you have the coaching part, issues and solutions. Show your OKRs under coaching. It says show your OKRs in traffic light fashion: green, yellow, red. Green, that is on track; yellow, slightly off track; red, far off track. And show your KPIs in traffic light fashion as well. Show any pipelines that are relevant: recruiting, sales. This roughly represents departments. If I were to dig into these updates, what would I discover in your department that is good, that is not good? Please describe the issue in detail as well as your proposed solution. This is under coaching. And it says this proposed solution should include what you can do to solve the issue, what I, your manager, can do to help you, to help unblock you. Please list any other issues that you see in your company with your peers, the product, and so on. Then you have the transparency part, which is the feedback. This feedback is the manager's part mostly. What did you like that I did as manager? What do you wish that I would do differently as manager to support you during the week? This is the team members part, providing on these 3 points: accountability, coaching, transparency. And it says, as a second point under transparency there, please think of the feedback that you are afraid to give me because you think that it will hurt my feelings. Hurting feelings are an important consideration. So it requires thinking about it. But I think if someone says that it's okay, just talk to me about it, then that person might be easily open to it. But then there's people who would also encourage you and say, tell me what you think I'm not doing right. And then you tell them, oh, and then they use it against you. That's bad. So the manager, you have the transparency part, and then get feedback from your support. That's basically what the first part of the transparency means. And then the second part talks about give feedback to your report, declare. And then the third part of transparency is update the team members' goals. And then it says schedule these meetings regularly at a fixed day and time. The schedule is usually weekly, but can be a bi-weekly or even monthly once a team member develops expertise at a task if goals remain consistent over time. Another alternative is to set different paces for accountability, coaching, and transparencies. That is, meet weekly for coaching and transparency, but do accountability on a bi-weekly or monthly cadence. And then we're on to this section. On your day set aside for meetings. And then I think this is interesting because now I see that the manager's part is mostly the transparency part. Remember, we had 3 parts for meetings to be really effective. We have the accountability, we have the coaching, and then we have the transparency part. But it appears here that for the manager, look here, for the manager, you have only a requirement of transparency. But then for the team member, you have accountability, coaching, and then you also have transparency. So I think that that's quite interesting. Okay. So one-on-one meetings prior to the meeting, schedule them back to back. Allot 25 or 50 minutes for each one-on-one. If there is a serious issue to discuss, such as a serious job dissatisfaction, then use your open office hours, see below later. Then one-on-one and team meetings can be merged if a team is small. So if it's a small team, we can merge both of them so that we do not spend time talking too much in the name of meetings. So that's I don't should I read like each part, but I think that this part is self-explanatory. That being said, I do recommend, let me read each part. One-on-one and team meetings can be merged if a team is small enough, but be cautious about giving negative feedback in a group setting. Unless your team has agreed to radical transparency and actively wants this public negative feedback, shame is likely to arise. Most companies, therefore, opt to provide negative feedback only during one-on-one meetings. That being said, I do recommend moving to a culture of radical transparency. Doing so will allow you to merge all one on one meetings into the team meeting. This can save you 4 to 6 hours on your day of internal meetings. So I think the company where you this really works is a company with a mature team of employees, and where everybody just understand that that's the nature of the work, that the feedback that comes, whether it's positive or negative, is going to move the company forward. And if we can get past the shame and discomfort of being called out in the team meeting, then we can maybe be much more effective or productive in the way that we discharge our work and build relationships within the company. But radical transparency first requires explicit buy-in from every team member. I think that this point is apt, that you need to have the buy-in before you pull that off, so it doesn't become another issue you have to address. So buy-in from every team member and training in how to do it effectively. Conscious Leadership Group runs excellent one-day trainings. There is an organization that for that. This is an organization, Conscious Leadership Group. I think we've alluded to them in a previous chapter, runs one-day trainings um, for this. In radical transparency, the investment of time may seem large, but usually pays itself back within a few weeks. That is saving a half day per week. Team meeting. In order to support the company's quarterly goals, each team must meet weekly or bi-weekly if the team is very smooth running. Two, one, hold each other accountable to the actions they need to perform, surface and resolve any issues in the company, and three, give each other feedback. So this is one of the things that makes a team meeting really productive. In order to ensure that all participants are prepared for this meeting, I recommend holding one-on-ones in the morning just prior to the team meeting. The one-on-ones then serve as preparation for the team meeting. I think this is a point is alluded to, we've mentioned several times, that one-on-ones are effectively preparations for the team meeting. This is too bright. Okay. During the team meeting, each attendee should one report whether they accomplished their declared actions from the previous week, from the previous meeting rather. So yeah, it could roughly also be from the previous week. This should be a simple yes or no. If no, they should also write why they didn't do the action and what habits they can adopt to make sure they never encounter that obstacle again. Here is an example. Give feedback from Joe. Get feedback from Joe. No, the feedback was no. Why? I forgot about it and therefore didn't ask for feedback when I met with Joe. Okay, that was the task, to get feedback from Joe. And was it achieved? No. That, and this is why. And then this is habit. Create an agenda list. So it's a good way. I think I'm going to build something really practical to make all of these things work for me. But I think too that this book is not new. There are systems, company operations. I've seen one operation now deck that was built based on the content of this book. So eventually, you might join a team that has a template for all of these things that we've discussed, or you could join a team that doesn't have a template for it, and then you need to create one. One of the things that I think Mochary does well with his team is that they provide such services. So you can contact the Mochary team based on this book and request that a system be created for you or alongside with your team for your specific organization. Then it says number two, report their department updates. People should report their department updates on the team meetings. People should report their department updates and show one link to traffic lighted KPIs, link to traffic lighted OKRs. Then second thing, in department updates, the written updates should be a deep dive into these metrics, good and not good. What exactly is the issue? What is your proposed solution for correcting the issue? Then you have number three, declare what actions they will do until the next meeting. And number four, provide feedback to the team leader and peers in they like and wish that format. So peer to peer, you have reports to managers and you have manager to reports. Then the agenda for the meeting then becomes one update from each team member, one, two, three from above, discuss issues and propose solutions, write and review feedback. This is the agenda for team meetings. Let us highlight this one with this column. Okay. Team meetings follow the same information flow as the one-on-ones, accountability, coaching, and transparency. In fact, as the team is effectively preparing in writing in advance for the meetings, the accountability and coaching portion of the one-on-ones can simply be moved to the team meeting. This is actually more effective and efficient, allowing more time during the one-on-ones for transparency. It is important to time box all agenda items so that the meetings don't run on and all issues get addressed. This is done by putting a number before each agenda item. 5 minutes is indicated as five in brackets, square brackets. At the end of the allotted time, move on. If there are still decisions to be made, create a rapid. We've talked about rapid and now it's been alluded to again. So I think that one of the things that you need to take away here is to create a rapid culture for your organization. It says it is critical that everyone submit all their updates, issues, and feedback in writing prior to the meeting, as discussed in chapter 8, writing versus talking. So if you have a lot of things written down before the meetings, you eventually spend less amount of time doing verbal engagements. So open office hour, each manager should set aside 1 hour 1 hour each week for an open office hour during which anyone can come to introduce an issue. This ensures that all employees feel that they can be heard, but limits the amount of time required to a predictable level for the manager. So you can just have an open office hour for the department, and it's not going to be something so difficult if you have like 1 hour per week or even 30 minutes. Anything more than 1 hour per week, in my personal opinion, means there's just too many wrong things going on in that organization, and you need to do something more than just creating office hours. But 1 hour per week is just about enough for open office hour because you have other avenues to talk about things. But the purpose of the open office hour, in this case at the department level, is as it says, so that anybody can feel heard, they can walk in and then have a discussion about an issue that has recently come under their attention. Then you have company-wide meeting on a cadence that varies between once a week and once a month. It is important to have a company-wide meeting where the results of the most recent leadership team meeting are shared and follow the same format. Allow time, as always, for anyone in the company to bring up their own issues or to provide feedback. For another perspective, Peter Reinhardt of Segment shares, we use all hands for sharing across teams of what teams are accomplishing, working on, celebrating wins, reinforce our values and recognition broadly, plus bringing in customers to talk. I find this much healthier than an obsession with whatever leadership team is talking about. Although we do present the board deck plus board topics once a quarter. So this looks like something that's a little more democratic, just a little more open. So, and I think this is Peter Reinhardt of Segment saying this is what has worked for them. So, if a CEO of an organization who has done considerably successfully well tells you that this is how their process, this is what their process has been, then if you're in a company that isn't doing really well, then you want to take it quite seriously. I think that's really important. Quarterly offsites. Once a quarter, the leadership team and eventually the entire company, which consists of all the department heads, should take a day or two to one, talk about the past, do a retrospective on the prior quarter. How did we do against our OKRs and KPIs? How did we function as a team? This is called 360 feedback. Then, aside from talking about the past, you also want to talk about the future. So, the future, plan for the future quarter, refresh vision and values, dig into issues or propose solutions, use the emotions exercise shared in issue identification in chapter 14, set the new company OKRs, which then will cascade to departments, teams, and individuals. Then refresh the company KPIs, which then will cascade to departments, teams, and individuals. Then that's for the future. So let us highlight this one. Then bond, get to know and like each other as human beings. That is very simple and straightforward. Okay, then you have structural activities. Collect superficial personal information. These are the structural activities that will help you get to bond. If you really knew me, then you should know some personal things like, oh, which area I live, even though you may not know my house. But I think that companies where employees have been together for like 10 years eventually know each other's house. So like, I recently listened to a podcast, and the professor said that she had a students over at her house. So a professor having students over at her house, that's cool. So you have peer feedback. Use the feedback exercise shared in conflict resolution in chapter 14. Then you have unstructured activities, drinks at the bar, sports, and so on and so forth. The campfire spirit. I recommend scheduling these offsites on a Thursday/Friday so that you can, yeah, then offer an optional weekend unstructured events with spouses. Team members oftentimes would like to get to know each other, but they are waiting for you to organize the events that will allow them to do so. So let's take this point again. It says organize offsites on Thursday/Friday. Remember, it initially said all team meetings should be on a particular day. So all internet meetings should be on a particular day. So now it's saying Tuesday or Friday. So I think that all team meetings being on a particular day isn't really fixed. You have to decide how it works for your organization, as I said earlier. And then especially so that you can accommodate such things as the social calendar or the social events. Then you have the part about vision. To create 10-year vision, imagine it is 10 years from now. You are the dominant company in the industry. Ask yourself, what industry do you dominate? This question will help you fine tune all your operations, like just be play out in one industry, because one company cannot play in every industry. Now we have big mega companies like Google, Facebook, and so on, who have like core diversified industries that they play in, and they're dominant in those industries. But essentially they have like a base. When it comes to SpaceX, they are fundamentally a space technology company. And even though they own Twitter. Does it actually own Twitter, or it's a subsidiary that owns Twitter now? But it's called X anyway. Now called X anyway. So it also says who is your customer. This should be a real living being, not a corporate entity. Well, they are B2B companies. Who is your ideal customer? So they are B2B entities. So I think that might apply there. And then you have what pain do they have that you're solving for them? What is unique about your solution that causes the customer to choose you? You're looking back essentially, trying to figure out your vision by looking back. That's what we're doing here. So you have this vision part. So this is the vision part and the values part. There are many ways to create your company values. A simple one is to complete the following sentence. The rest of you in the company can make all the decisions from now on as long as you. This is appropriate when the company is small and values are entirely aspirational. So it's small and they haven't started figuring things out. But if you can make a statement like this, about other your colleagues, then I think you're onto something good, because this statement seems to be an expression of trust. So another version to acknowledge the culture that you already have. To do this, each leadership team member should pick one person in the company who is not on the leadership team and exhibits a value that you wish would be a universal behavior. Name the person and the behavior, then select 3 to 5 such examples. This method is best used for the company already that's that already has a sizable team and existing culture. Then you have the OKRs part, which is this part. Um, for your quarterly goals or OKRs, objectives and key results, the target is 3 and 3. That's 3 individually and then 3 on the team level. 3 objectives with 3 key results for each objective. Oh, I think that's what it means by 3 and 3. 3 objectives and 3 key results. Create these OKRs for the company, then for each department based on the OKRs, then for each team based on the department OKRs, then for each individual based on the team OKRs. Warning: a common mistake is to create department OKRs without creating company level OKRs. So you want to have company level OKRs, then department level OKRs, then you have individual based OKRs. So it should flow from company down to the individuals and not um, from the department um, up to the company and then down to individuals. So it's if you do it that way, it's going to lead to siloed fiefdoms that do not work together nor trust each other. Objectives answers the questions: where do we want to go? This objective should tell a compelling story akin to the tagline of a Hollywood movie. It does not need to be measurable. Ironically, it can be subjective. The objectives can be subjective, but it should be inspiring. The key results answers the question: how do we know that we are getting there? The key results part is the part that is objectively measurable, and it says here examples. This is one example: objective to massively grow revenues, and then that could be for the sales team. And then key results: 500,000 MRR, $500,000 in MRR. Then hire 10 additional SDRs, hire sales ops person to pro- project project manage the sales team. Then company OKRs, you have something on company OKRs, and company OKRs effectively says, um, he says this should be broad enough that they encompass the whole company so that each department and team can feel that their work is contributing to at least one of the company's priorities. Typical company level OKRs include profits, massively grow revenues while minimizing expense, our product delights our customers, then people create a positive and transparent environment where we are all inspired to do our best work. Then you have something here. It talks about forming OKRs. At the end of each quarter, gather the leadership team together and collaborate on the coming quarter's OKRs, objectives and key results. I found the process that gets the best results is and most buy-in is to make every member of your leadership team to separately write up what they think the global OKRs of the company should be, then simply combine the ideas of everyone into one document. You will see common themes and have a healthy debate about the company's priorities. Let us highlight this part uh, because it says this is the part I recommend from experience. So that's nugget, that's gold there. The key thing to keep in mind when forming OKRs is that they are clearly defined and measurable so that a third party could adjudicate whether or not they were completed. Once your leadership team has come up with the company's OKRs, share them with the wider team and instruct each department head to perform the same process within their department. And then at the department or individual level, during one-on-ones. Keep in mind, it is much better for people to come up with their own OKRs that align with the companies rather than just handing them down. That way, they feel personally invested and have buy-in. Let's highlight that. The OKR creation process is usually a distracting one. Therefore, keep it to 1 week or less if it is all possible. Make this an admin week and do all the other required quarterly admin processes, last quarter's OKR debrief, performance management, etc. So this is a task that can happen simultaneously with other tasks being performed. Here is a potential timeline for OKR creation during admin week. So you have timeline for admin week. You have day one, leadership team meeting, and day two, each department has group meeting, and day three, each team has group meeting, 2 hours to create. So day one, leadership team meeting with all department heads, 2 hours to create company OKRs. Day two, each department has group meeting, 2 hours to create OKRs, and the three each team has group meeting, 2 hours to create OKRs. Then the four each sub team has group meeting, 2 hours to create sub team OKRs, and the five each individual creates individual OKRs, sub team head to check and approve all individual OKRs by end of the day, and the six at leadership team meeting, CEO checks and approves all OKRs, announce all OKRs to company at all hands. So this is the timeline for the admin week. Then it says tracking OKRs. We've talked about something around tracking OKRs previously, and then we looked at tools like 15.5 Better Works in the previous video. So it says you should use one of these third-party tools or create a traffic lighted green, yellow, red sheet. The system should show week by week which OKRs are on track. That is, they'll be green, slightly off track, they'll be yellow, and far off track, they'll be in red. And then it says here is an example prompt the leadership team to update the status of their OKRs on track, lagging, or poor as part of the one-on-one process and ask your managers to do likewise. For all OKRs that are far off track, require the DRI, directly responsible individual, to create a written issue/solution to get back on track. So this brings us to the end of chapter 24 meetings. So you can see how chapter 24 was just dedicated to like it's really granular, particular. It says for this kind of meeting, this is what you should do. For if you're doing this kind of thing in this organization, or if this is the case, then you want to do X or Y. So I think that's one of the things about this book. It's really practical. And sometimes if you're watching this video and you just go on see me talking and it looks like I'm just I'm just blabbing on things. At this level, if this is the first time you're reading this book and you haven't experienced some of these processes, it looks foreign. But if you've been in corporate organizations for roughly even at least 2 years, you would have experienced some of these things. I think the places where you have the highest learning benefits for things like this is in a small organization where these things aren't really structured, and together as a team, you're trying to figure things out. The places where you have the most benefits and you really have little buying because the system has already been created is with organizations that have already established the template for most of these things. So you just come in and then you plug and play. So but other than that, I think the content has been practical enough, describing various issues and various moments within the team and for how you should operate or get things done. So that's one of the things that's really interesting about this book, the way it takes practical insights and just says this is what is applicable in this case, and this it has worked for this company, or this is what the CEO of another company says about this process. So thanks for watching. God bless. We'll continue and see you in chapter 25.